Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So we're going with my favorite mid-range plays for week 8 of the NFL season over on Draftkings. I also posted my favorite high-end targets video a couple of days ago if you want to check that out. And I'll be recording my favorite value plays video shortly too if you want to keep an eye out for that. And then later on the weekend we'll do our lineup building video, the core plays video, and then I think that'll be the rest of the videos for this weekend. So check them out if you want. Also, if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out and I really do appreciate it. Without further ado, let's dive right into it. And as per usual, we'll start with the quarterback position. And my favorite mid-range QB this week is Joe Burrow at $6,200. He's having a pretty good season so far. He looks the part of being a franchise quarterback. Problem is the Bengals, they're not that great of a team. But this is a good game for DFS purposes. And he's got plenty of options to get the ball to. He's got T. Higgins. He's got Tyler Boyd. He's got AJ Green, who I know he's kind of washed, but he's been getting a lot of targets the past couple of weeks. And I expect Joe Mixon to probably not play in this game. And I would expect Gio Bernard to get the start. And he's a capable pass-catching running back as well. And with Mixon out, Joe Burrow was getting some goal line carries last week. He had that goal line rushing touchdown on the quarterback sneak, so there's a little bit of upside there in that regard. But still, I like this game a lot for fantasy purposes. A ton of good fantasy options, especially on the Tennessee side of the ball. But it just makes for a good stack. I mean, this entire game is stackable. I mean, on the Bengals side of the ball, you have everyone already mentioned. But then the Titans, you got Ryan Tannehill, you got Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, JONNU Smith. It's a pretty loaded game for fantasy purposes. It's also got a 53-point over-under, and the Bengals are 5.5-point dogs here, which means they should probably be in a pass-heavy script. And that's nothing new for the Bengals. They have been throwing the ball quite a bit this season. Joe Burrow is actually averaging over 40 pass attempts per game. Specifically, he's at 41.86, nearly 300 passing yards per game. Although I will say he's been a little bit of a check down Charlie, only 6.9 yards per attempt, but still he's throwing the ball a lot. They usually find themselves in pass-heavy game shifts because they're trailing, because their defense is pretty poor for the most part. So Joe Burrow at $6,200, I think he's going to pay off his price tag quite easily. And both these teams play at a pretty fast pace, and this is going to be the fastest paced game on this slate. I mean, Tennessee's up there in pace of play, and the Bengals are as well. So I like this game a lot for fantasy purposes, and Tennessee's defense has not been that great, especially versus the pass this season. 19th DVA versus the pass, but allowing 22.2 DraftKings points per game to the position, which is ranked 23rd in the league. Around 280 passing yards per game and 2.5 passing touchdowns allowed per game as well. So Joe Burrow, I like him a lot. I like pairing up with one of his pass catching options in either T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, or AJ Green. I feel like AJ Green's going to be pretty popular this week at that, I believe, $4,500 price tag, and he's been getting a ton of targets the past couple of games, and he's kind of killing it in the air yards department this season. And again, it's a really good matchup here versus Tennessee. So Joe Burrow, I like him quite a bit, like this price tag, and he should be a pretty good play once again this week. Then we move on to the running back position, and with one of my favorite plays of the entire week at any position, we have KAREEM Hunt at $6,900. A little bit pricey, so he barely makes it into the mid-range here, but this guy is one of the locks on the slate for me. I have a hard time seeing him not make my core plays video. Just a spoiler alert for later on in the week, but this is such a good spot for him. Now, we'll say there is expected weather in this game. It's going to be quite windy, which is going to be a hit to the passing game. And we actually have seen this total drop 2 to 3 points. I can't remember if early on in the week it was either at 53.5 or at 52.5, but it's now currently at 50.5. And so bettors are kind of a little bit worried about the weather, I would assume. But even then, that's just a bump for KAREEM Hunt because the Browns are relying on the run more than they do already, which this is a team that likes to run the football a lot. Usually, the more they have the ball out of Baker's hand, the more successful the Browns are. Although Baker had an absolutely awesome game last week, you gotta mention that. That was absolutely phenomenal. Hit like 22 passes in a row if you take out the spike. Absolutely insane game for Baker, not over 5 touchdowns. He was at 5 touchdowns and the game-winning touchdown at the end of the game. But KAREEM Hunt here versus this Las Vegas Raiders defense, which has been pretty brutal versus running backs this season, and I mean that in a good way for KAREEM Hunt. They've been brutal to themselves, I should say. Love Hunt here. The matchup's pristine. He's one of the most talented running backs in football. Another week of no Nick Chubb, so he's going to be the clear bell cow running back in this offense. He's a capable pass-catching running back as well, so he's kind of game script proof either way. But the Browns are 2.5-point favorites here. And if you're looking at the Raiders this season versus the run, 29th DVA versus that, 32.9 DraftKings points per game allowed to the position, which is third most in the league. Around 100 rushing yards per game, over rushing touchdown per game, and they're getting killed through the air by running backs as well, with 7 catches and over 60 receiving yards per game as well. So KAREEM Hunt, he's one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. He should be above 7K here, and I'd play him if he was above 7K. I love KAREEM Hunt a ton, and he's going to be a tough fade this week in all formats. And the next running back I want to talk about is in the same game, just on the opposite side. We have Josh Jacobs at $6,200, and both these guys are going to be high volume running backs. They're also very talented, and this is a good game to target for DFS purposes. Now, earlier in the week, before I even take weather into consideration, because on Mondays and Tuesdays, I think it's kind of a waste of time to get into the weather because things can change a lot. But as of right now, this is Friday when I'm going to post the video. It's looking like weather's going to be a bit of an issue in this Browns game, which means the running backs might be better plays than the passing game. Now, I still think we can play guys in the passing game. Just know it does take a hit if weather indeed happens to be an issue. It's still Friday, so things can change by Sunday. But as of right now, there's definitely some concern for the passing game and quite a few games this weekend, especially the Browns game. So this would be a bump to the running backs. We can still play the pass catching options, but these running backs at $6,200 for Josh Jacobs and KAREEM at $6,900, and both get good matchups here. It's going to be pretty tough to pass these guys up. And Josh Jacobs, I know he hasn't had the best of seasons so far. He's actually yet to top 100 rushing yards in a game so far this season, but he's a very talented running back, and he always grades out well on PFF in terms of his broken tackle ability, his agility, and just plenty of other metrics as well. And he's getting nearly 20 rushing attempts per game, so volume is not an issue with Josh Jacobs. He's also scored quite a few touchdowns this season, nearly a rushing touchdown per game, but a very, very ugly 3.4 yards per carry. But he's a little bit involved in the passing game this season, which is something we couldn't say last year. Now, it's nothing too crazy, about 4 targets per game, but it's still up from last season, which is 11% target share. Now, the matchup versus the Browns, they are worse versus the pass, but they're still a bottom half team when it comes to the run this season, or 19th DVA versus that. But they are allowing the 13th fewest points per game to the running back position, but still, I think Josh Jacobs at $6,200 is an excellent play this week. And we have seen running backs have success versus Cleveland. So, big fan of Jacobs here, and I'm also a big fan of KAREEM Hunt as well on the opposite side. And a lot of points should be scored here. I know that I said weather is going to be an issue, but they still have a 50.5 point over-under here. So, I'm not that concerned. They're only 2.5 point dogs, so I'm not expecting the Raiders to get blown out here. So, they should be able to establish the run with Jacobs, and I think he's a very solid play given his price point. And then moving on to the wide receiver position, we have TYREEK at $6,700. And I got to be honest, I'm a little bit worried about the Chiefs this weekend. Not anything to do with the matchup or their talent or whatever. They're obviously pretty much the most talented offense in football. They have the best quarterback in the league throwing the ball to them. And it's a fantastic matchup versus the Jets, pretty much the worst team in football. The only issue I have is that they're nearly 20-point favorites at home here, and this game could get out of hand quick, which means it might be hard for them to hit their absolute ceilings. Now, there is a chance that in the first 2 or 3 quarters, Mahomes throws 5 touchdowns, and all these guys pretty much get a full game's worth of value, which that's certainly a scenario that could happen. But I'm just a little bit concerned here. But TYREEK at $6,700, I think he's a pretty strong play. Now, he always seems like a guy that's better suited for GPPs than cash games, but he's actually been one of the most consistent wide receivers in football this year. He's only scored below 15 fantasy points in 1 game, and he's scored in all but 1 as well. So TYREEK has been very consistent. He's got Patrick Mahomes throwing him the football, and the Jets, they are just not that great of a defense. They're not good versus the run. They're not good versus the pass. Looking at their numbers versus the pass so far this season, they are 28 DVA versus that, allowing 37 Draftkings points per game at the position, which is actually mid-pack, but it's still TYREEK Hill. He can burn anybody deep. And like I've already mentioned a couple of times already, you got Patrick Mahomes throwing the football, which is always a big added boost. So TYREEK Hill, I do like him quite a bit here. He's a very nice wide receiver versus cornerback matchup advantage this week, according to PFF. And on his numbers for him this season in the target department, it's nothing too crazy. He only has a 20% target share and less than 7 targets per game. But he's someone that can be very efficient with his touches, and we know he's always has big play upside. He's got an 8 out of 13.4 this season, a 36% market share of the team's air yards. So TYREEK Hill, maybe just a little bit pricey, but I feel like that's $6,700 still pretty cheap for a guy like TYREEK Hill, who always has like 150-yard, 2-touchdown upside each and every single week. And then moving on to our second guy, we have one of the other locks of the week. I think in addition to KAREEM Hunt, it's going to be really hard not to play KAREEM Hunt and KEENAN this week. $6,200, this is just way too cheap. It's the same price he was last week, and I said pretty much the same thing. He's kind of the same play as last week. And Justin Herbert, his quarterback, the rookie quarterback, he looks absolutely phenomenal. Looks like the real deal, and he has been straight balling since he's gotten the starting job in week 2. And KEENAN has certainly benefited from that. He's getting a ton of targets each and every single week. If you're looking at his numbers so far this season, the target department, I just looked at the game log really quick. He had 13, 2 in week 5 versus the Saints. But you got to keep in mind, he only played like a drive in that game, and he still scored, but he left the game early, getting injured. But outside of that game, he had 11 targets, 19 targets, 10 targets, and then 8 targets. That was with Tyrod Taylor, so I'm not really going to count that. But with Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen has been absolutely fantastic, and his numbers on the season are super strong. A 31% target share, 68% weighted opportunity share, 10 targets per game, and overall some very strong numbers. And you also have to keep in mind, that's counting the game where he only had 2 targets and left the game early. So if you take that game out of the equation, the numbers would be even higher as well. So Keenan Allen at $6,200. This is going to be one of the toughest fades of the week. You have to play him in cash games. If you want to get different, you can fade him in tournaments, but even that, I don't think that's that great of an idea. I'd rather get different somewhere else because Keenan Allen, I mean, he's just a absolutely phenomenal play here. And if you're looking at how Denver's done versus wide receivers this season, they're actually 9th DVA versus the pass, but they're bottom half in the league when it comes to wide receivers, allowing nearly 40 DraftKings points per game to the position. And Keenan Allen's got everything working for him. He's going to get plenty of volume. His quarterback looks absolutely awesome, and he's very talented. So he checks pretty much every single box for me. And also, if you want to check 4 boxes, the price is nice as well. So Keenan Allen, huge fan of this week, and he's one of the best plays on the slate. And the last wide receiver I want to talk about is rookie Brandon AIYUK at $5,800, and this is mainly just because Deebo Samuel is out, and the matchup versus Seattle is the absolute nuts for a wide receiver. They go off versus them pretty much each and every single week. They have just struggled versus the pass in all aspects this season, just so bad. 30th DVA versus the pass, allowing an insane 64.3 DraftKings points per game to the wide receiver position, which is obviously dead last in the league. And also another number that just sounds too crazy to be real, but they're allowing 280 receiving yards per game just to wide receivers. Just to wide receivers, nearly 2 receiving touchdowns per game as well. You know, with Deebo Samuel out, we should expect AIYUK to have a pretty prominent role in this offense, and he's looked good this season. The guy is obviously very talented. And he's coming off a great game versus New England last week where he had 6 catches, 115 yards on 7 targets, and scored over 20 DraftKings points. And it's not like this is going to be the first or the second week that he's been involved in the offense. He's been putting up points each and every single week. Like before that, 9 points, 7 points, 13 points, 21 points, and 4 points. You know, Deebo Samuel being out here, AIYUK, I mean, he should get plenty of targets here, probably close to double digits, and the matchup is great versus Seattle, and this is one of the higher over-unders on the slate as well at 54. They're only 3-point dogs here as well with a 25.5 implied team total. So AIYUK, I think he's a great pairing with Jimmy Garoppolo, who's one of the best cheap quarterbacks this week. So the Garoppolo to AIYUK combo is definitely a favorite of mine this week, and you get really good price tags on him, and it's a great matchup versus Seattle. And then finally, my favorite mid-range tight end of the week is JONNU Smith at $4,100. Now, keep in mind, I guess I could have put Darren Waller here, and I was kind of regretting putting Darren Waller on the favorite spend-ups video because he's only $5,600, I believe. So Darren Waller could easily be here, so if you're wondering where the heck he is because he's a great play, he was on my favorite high-end targets video if you did not check that out already. You could slide him in here as well because $5,600 is more so mid-range than it is expensive. Just in terms of tight ends, I felt like it was more mid-range than it was... I felt like it was more high-end than it was mid-range. So we're going to talk about JONNU Smith here. And for the value tight ends in the next video, there's quite a few guys in the 3K range that I do like. So I just plugged in JONNU Smith at $4,100. And I know we had a disappointing week last week, but before he's been playing pretty well this season. He's been scoring touchdowns, and Ryan Tannehill has been playing out of his mind since Week 7 last year. And like I mentioned earlier with Joe Burrow, this is one of my favorite games for fantasy purposes this weekend with a 53-point over-under. The Titans have a team total of nearly 30 this week. They're 5.5-point favorites, and both these teams play at a pretty fast pace as well. And this matchup, specifically for a tight end versus Cincinnati, it's absolutely elite. They've been getting killed versus them all season long. They just got hammered by Harrison Bryant and David Njoku last week, where they gave up 3 touchdowns to that combo, and they weren't even starting tight ends before that week with Austin Hooper being out. So they've been getting absolutely crushed, and they're 20-68 versus the pass, allowing the 4th most points per game to the tight end position, about 70 receiving yards per game, and nearly receiving touchdown per game as well, and nearly 20 DraftKings points per game allowed to the position. So JONNU Smith, he's in a great spot here. I love this price tag, and it's an excellent buy low spot on JONNU Smith, a guy that was playing very well in the early portion of this season. So JONNU Smith at $4,100. Excellent value play if you're not going super cheap at tight end, if you're not going super expensive. JONNU Smith fits in your lineups very nicely at only 4.1K. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope it was helpful. If it was, make sure you leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at ChrisPennell16 on Twitter, CPenn16 over on IG. And if you want some more content over on Patreon, that's always much appreciated. But just wait until the beginning of the month because it's near the end of the month, and you don't get double charged for that. But you can get access to the spreadsheets, the Discord chat, and all that fun stuff as well. But if you are interested, just wait till the beginning of the month just to make things easier for me so I don't have to refund you. All right, but I'm going to get out of here, guys. Enjoy the start to your weekend, and I hope you have a fantastic day.